Well, hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live Q&A where I'm delighted to be joined by Shaun Fooy, who is a senior manager for the UK network at the British Business Bank. And today we're going to talk about funding and finance for Northeast business. So thank you for joining, Shaun. How are you doing today?
Not bad, Paul. Thanks for having me on today. That's great. Yeah.
Good. Well, I suppose we'll start with what is the British Business Bank?
Yeah, so the British Business Bank is not a bank in the sense of a commercial lender like a Barclays or a Lloyds. We don't have a banking license, for example, because we don't need one. We're the UK's development bank. We're owned effectively by BEIS, who are our shareholder, the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, for those who haven't heard the name BEIS before. And we're funded by the UK Treasury. And our job since we came into being back in 2016, I think it was 2015, is to try and support small businesses across the UK with regard to access funding, and wherever they are on their journey, whether they be a startup, a scaling business, or a more mature business. And we use the term "stay ahead" when we say that about a more mature business. And it's all around making sure that business can access the funding they want, and supporting them on their journey and upskilling them in many ways, so they can find that funding and get that proposal and their business plan or whatever it might be across to that particular funder.
Okay, great. Well, I remember. I think I remember hearing Vince Cable giving a talk at a Shell Livewire event, because was he then the Deputy Prime Minister, and I think he announced that.
I think or business secretary. He had quite a senior role within the coalition government at the time. So the UK has probably been one of the last to the party in having a development bank. I don't know the reasons behind that, but many other major economies like Germany, the US had them from about the 1940s to 1950s. But obviously we've hit the ground running since then. There's around 400 staff work for the bank now. We have got two offices, one in Sheffield and one in London. I'm home based, so I work from home, and we have a network team that sits around them, and I'm one of 13 managers in that network team covering the whole of the UK. And our job within that network team is to be the eyes and ears of the bank on the ground, really. What's going on in your local patch? So I cover the North East Left patch area, the 7 local authorities, either side of the Tyne and the Wear, and try and support on activities and events that might be taking place in those areas, partnering with people like yourself, Newcastle Startup Week, or indeed with other bodies, whether they be public or private sector. And trying to upskill people in the knowledge. I mean, my background, I was a relationship manager for a number of major banks for nearly 30 years, a lending manager, working with small businesses across the region. I was born in South Shields. I live in Gateshead now, so I do have a passion for the region. I want to see businesses in the Northeast succeed.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So I've got some. I just took some stuff on the website. You've touched on it a little bit about the British Business Bank wanting to increase the supply of finance where markets don't work well, to help create a more diverse finance market, to identify and help reduce imbalances in access to finance, like regional imbalances, I guess, and to be a centre of expertise for small business to feed back to the government. So do you want to explain how you do each of those things?
Yeah. So if you're looking at being I think if we go sort of back to front as well, if you're being a centre of expertise, one of the things we're trying to do is we're gathering information all the time. We're collating reports and we're collating documentation, which we feed into government. So things like our Small Business Finance Market Report that we publish every year looks at finance both on a national scale and locally for small businesses. What's happening in different parts of the country across both debt and equity? Can businesses access the funding they need, or are they struggling to get it? Are they relying on public schemes like the North East Fund that operates in this region and our own Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund that operates in Tees Valley? How can they get that funding? And we're then feeding that back to government through our stakeholder BEIS and also through the Treasury, so they can have an up-to-date picture. And actually, are there good programs and projects that are happening in another part of the country that could be replicated in other regions, in other parts of the UK? Is there something good that's happening in one of the devolved nations in Scotland or Wales, Northern Ireland? Could that be copied in England, for example?
Yeah.
That's that centre of expertise thing. The levelling up thing, it's probably best to spin it through an example. We run a regional angel programme, and that angel programme works with existing angel networks to try and create a new fund in a particular, to further propagate angel investment, early stage equity investment for businesses. But one of the mantras that we have with those angel groups is they must be able to deploy regionally, because before our existence, most angel deals were written in the Golden Triangle, London, Oxford, and Cambridge, because there's been an ecosystem in that since the Second World War, for the last, 70, 80 years, whatever it is. And consequently, businesses outside that ecosystem, outside that Golden Triangle, were stifled and didn't get the access to the early stage funding, early stage equity they needed. So if we're going to create a joint fund with an angel network, one of the prerequisites is that they have got to be capable of deploying on a regional basis and evidence that to us, and that they're interested in looking at deals in the Northwest or the Northeast or the Midlands or wherever it might be in the UK. And that it's trying to level up the agenda and try and attract more businesses to step forward to look at angel investment, which when I joined the bank 3 years ago, you didn't see many businesses looking at that. It was not very well understood. It was a bit of an anathema, and you're starting to see the rise of some angel groups, which the pandemic has propagated, because people are able to join events virtually. They don't have to be in the room and travel, a couple of 100 miles to attend an event if they're based in London or if they're based in Edinburgh or somewhere like that.
Okay. On that, I know definitely years ago, I remember when I was working for Shell Live, I mentioned them again before. Wondering why is there not more investment in outside of London and in the region? And back then, you talked about 2015, 2012, 2015. So around about the time that's when I met Vince K. He spoke at one of our events. And at the time, investors, they were reluctant to invest outside of London in the Golden Triangle area because they wanted a seat on the board. So they wanted some. That was put forward as one of the reasons why they didn't want to invest, because it was harder to access. They wanted somewhere on their doorstep. But definitely, it seems now through technology and particularly through COVID, that's less of an issue, and investors are much more willing to just hop on a Zoom call and do investments, do deals with companies in other parts of the country or even overseas if they can. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed a change?
Yeah, I'd definitely say that is the case. I think, when I joined, say 2018, you still saw some angels saying, if it's more than an hour away by travel, by train or car from my house, I'm not interested in the deal. There are also angels, if they were in that Golden Triangle, they got lots of deals that came to them every day of the week, so that they didn't really need to look beyond that area. But I think there's an acceptance now by angels generally that there are opportunities out in the regions. I always think there were investors in this region, but they didn't call themselves angels, and they probably didn't operate in any sort of structured way. They did things individually. You had to get to them through a contact, so you might have to go through a lawyer or an accountant, or you had to know somebody who knew somebody. They didn't advertise themselves as investors. They were there. They were in the background. Quite often, they were successful entrepreneurs themselves, either still in business or had been in business. But you're starting to see them want to come out the woodwork a little bit more, form themselves into groups and at least syndicate or potential syndicates long term to work in the regions. And I think you've then also drawn in angels from other parts of the country. Actually, I could look at a deal in the Northeast. I can engage with that business virtually. We can have a virtual board meeting if I do invest in that business. And yes, maybe a couple of times a year, I then do go up and see them in person. It doesn't have to mean that I'm losing a whole day traveling to the Northeast for a board meeting and to engage with them. So I think I also think from the other side of it, businesses are now more accepting of angel investment. Particularly younger entrepreneurs will think about, could I look at early stage equity investment? Whereas I think more traditional business owners probably shied away from it. If it's a family business and you've inherited from parents or grandparents, it's highly unlikely that you're going to look at equity investment, because it's a bit like asking you to sell the family silver to sell a share of your business. But I think for early stage businesses that are coming out of some of the accelerator programs, spin out of the university program that we have up in the region, Northern Accelerator program, I think that there's certainly more opportunity for them to look at funding and to engage. And I think there's more signposting around how they access that funding as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a lot of good work, hasn't there, to try and raise awareness and educate not only businesses on the different types of funding available, like so everything from grants, loans, crowdfunding, angel investment, venture capital, the whole range of funding. There's been, and we've tried doing that through the Startup Week events that they've done over the years as well, and lots of other people are doing it. And there's also been, I think, some good efforts to try and identify new angel investors, new potential people with a bit of money, high net worths, or people who might in the past have just put money into property or something quite traditional, who now might be open to investing in some earlier stage businesses.
I'd agree, because I think what we didn't see in the Northeast, and I think it's quite a recent phenomenon, is you didn't necessarily see serial entrepreneurs. There were one or two high profile individuals, but by and large, if somebody did become successful in business, sometimes they would sell out. And then they would go and invest in property, and they didn't necessarily look at becoming some sort of investor or angel. And some of them don't even like the term angel; they won't even use that phrase. But they are a little bit more open to looking at that now. And they don't just bring the money. I think the other thing they bring expertise and knowledge. They bring contact book. Particularly if they're coming, if they're working with an early stage tech business and they've come from a tech background, they have lots of contacts. They can introduce them to lots of people. They've been there, done it, and sort of got the T-shirt, as it were. So they consequently understand the pitfalls and the challenges. And if and I would always say, if somebody's looking at early stage investment, make sure you're working with an angel or angels that you feel comfortable with, that you feel you can engage with. If you don't think you can get along, that's going to be a challenge down the line. If you're not prepared to at least listen to their advice and their suggestions, that's going to be very, very difficult. And it's probably, I would probably say, don't take the money then, because it's going to lead to some pain down the line. Make sure you work with a group you get along with, that you engage with, that you feel can add value and can open the door to other opportunities for you. That's the critical thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, definitely, that's why I tell people, I quite often get people saying to me, look, we're looking for some funding or investing, do you know any that's available? And I'll go through the different types and I'll explain the pros and cons of them. And one, definitely angel investing it's the expertise. It's generally speaking, an angel will like to have a bit more of involvement or in the business, or not. They might not, but a lot of them do actually want to be in it for the ride. They still want to be involved if they can.
And I think the best thing to understand is they never, an angel doesn't want to run your business, and because they're not trying to take over your business. They want to stake in your business for a return, and they're looking eventually for an exit. Now, whether that be in 3 years or 5 years, but they'd like a defined exit of some description, whether that's going to be a trade sale or you're going to buy them out. And they're not there forever. They're there for a period of time, and they may want to have some sort of presence on your board, either themselves or one of their representatives. But at the end of the day, they're doing a dual role, if you like. That representative is trying to safeguard that money on the one hand. They don't want to see it go wrong, but equally they are there as advice and support. As I said, it's use them to bounce ideas off. Use them to say, well, actually, do you think this is a good idea? Or I think we should do this. I think we should do that. It's really lonely when you start in business. Other than family and friends, and possibly one or two business associates, who does a business owner go to for advice and support? They may go to if they've got an advisor of some sort, whether that be through a business support agency or an accountant, a lawyer. But beyond that, who can they relate to that in business and done it. They can't really approach a competitor, but if somebody is an investor in the business and they've been in that space themselves at some point, however many years ago, that enables them to at least have someone that can relate to them quite closely, I think.
Yeah,
definitely. And that's an important thing.
Yeah, definitely. And angels as well, again, maybe a sweeping statement, but generally I've found that they like to invest locally. You know, the angel investors will want to put money back into their region if they can.
Yeah, I think you do see that. I also we are seeing emergence of groups like SFC and Deep Bridge Capital. SFC are a London-based group, for example, with the bank as a partner with, and Deep Bridge are Chester-based, but they are investing regionally. You know, they're looking at the northeast, they're looking at Scotland, they're looking at areas of the country. I know there are some angel groups in Scotland looking closely at the northeast because they see, you know, particular clusters in, say, the tech sector, for example, or you know, the net zero green space that they're attracted to, life sciences, where they see some real opportunities, and they see a chance to work with companies that are, you know, have potential to you know, certainly be a scaling business, possibly even a unicorn at some point. So I think it's great to have an angel locally, but I think it's also great to attract in fresh blood from outside the region, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if they've got, like I say, those wider networks, national or international networks, and potentially deeper pockets as well. If they have had bigger success elsewhere.
Yes. If, you know, if they've sold a business in London, the chances are the value for that business is probably 4 or 5 times what you would have seen out in the regions. That's just the reality of the situation. So, and they can bring to the network of contacts out. You should never underestimate how valuable their contacts can be to your business. Definitely.
Good point. Just thought I'd go back a little bit about identify and help reduce imbalances in access to.
So I mean,
there's been, like, again, from what I've seen over the years, it seems to be that the Northeast is always kind of bottom or near the bottom in terms of access to certain investments.
I think that picture is changing, but I think we should try and. I think sometimes we beat ourselves up a little bit too much in the region and look at the sort of glass half empty. But you know, you've got the Northeast Fund that operates in the region. It isn't our fund, but we have a close relationship with the Northeast Fund, and 2 of the fund managers, Maven and Mercy, are on our programme. You know, our regional funds team work closely with them, engage with them, attend the board meetings, and have a real interest in to see the fund continue to work in the region. We see our own powerhouse investment fund, Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund, or NPIT fund, operating in Tees Valley, offering both debt and equity. And quite often, you know, something can be done through that fund, and then that enables that business to access later stage VC funding down the line, possibly through that fund manager that they work with, a Mercier or somebody like that, because they then have connections that they can bring to the party. You see North Star doing that. You know, they're working with funders, you know, across the UK and in Europe, and then can bring them into the equation if that business needs later stage funding down the line. So I think you know, they are public funds. I accept that, but they are trying to fill a gap in the market. And you are then seeing the emergence of the angel groups around that, and you are seeing VCs look at the region, say what opportunities are up in this region, and what can we do. I also think from the business owner's point of view, they're more realistic about taking equity investment, but they're also more realistic with their valuations. You know, if you talk to North Star and people like Alex Buck, and Alex will say sometimes the valuations were just totally unrealistic. People were bringing forward, and they were based it against, oh, well, that business is in that similar sort of sector and it's achieved X. Yes, but it's your business we're talking about. So your numbers, if the number is unrealistic, then you're not going to get the investment. What have you based your calculations on? That's what it always comes down to. And there are sort of little tips that you see in that space. You know, things like most investors prefer to see more than a one-person team. You know, more than one individual. You like to see a team of individuals, at least 2 people. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable if there was a husband and wife team, not always, because that can lead to challenges and issues. Sometimes people fall out. That's the reality of the situation, and a realistic valuation around what you're trying to do. And if you have a gap in your team, so there might be a gap, for example, in finance, how you're addressing that, what you're doing to sort that out. I think when people go on pitch as well, say Innovation Super Network, we partner with them on some activities and events, and they do some great pitch training to their accelerating investment program. I remember a long time ago, I went to hear a business pitch, and I still to this day don't know what that business does. The guy was the technical guy, and he clearly had a passion for the business. I got that, but I didn't really understand because he went into such depth, and he's only got 5 minutes to present. And he was probably the wrong individual to speak. No disrespect to him. It probably needed to be somebody who could encapsulate everything in 5 minutes. What your business does, what you've done so far, have you got any sort of pre-revenue or clients on board? What's your future aspirations? What do you want the money? How much do you want? And what are you going to do with the money? And what defined exit is there a defined exit? And who are the key players in the business? You can get all that into your sort of 5 minute pitch or whatever, or your 3 minute pitch. Then you're going to get some interest from an investor. They're going to want to talk to you afterwards. If you sort of mess it up, and I've seen some people really mess it up, all that sticks in your mind is the fact they messed it up. It does go back to first impressions count. I spoke to a business yesterday who he was signposted me by one of the enterprise agencies, and he was interested in securing some funding, and it was debt funding he wanted, and he's an established business. He's probably 3 years in, and he hasn't. I was saying it, I think I need, and he said I need a number between 40 and 100,000. That's a massive gap. You cannot go to a funder and say that because it sounds like you're a bit woolly. It sounds like you haven't really thought it through. Have an exact number in your head and explain how you've got to that figure. You'd only done 1 year's accounts. You need your second year's completed because the funder's going to want to see that. He hadn't done any management information, so he was 10 months into his trading year. Well, you need to show at least 9 months accounts. 9 months management. And there's some really good finance packages out there that you can have. Zero and lots of other good packages that you can use. Have that up-to-date information. Do you need to have any projections? If so, get them prepared. Do you need 3 years, whatever the number is, and show the business, show the lender or the funder that you can, that you can service the debt. And I said, don't go to the funder at this point because you leave a really bad impression in their head of you that you don't really know what you want, how much you want, and you haven't got. You'll give them bits of information. They need a package, a suite of information, and you haven't got that at this point. And you need to. He really need to work through his numbers. It was interesting. He was prepared to go and approach a particular funder, and I was like, I just don't think it's the right moment. He thought it was, and I was like, no, you're far away from where you need to be. He hadn't even spoken to as an accountant. He hadn't even spoken to his accountant about what he was planning to do. Well, the accountant's not just the number cruncher; they're also an advisor, and a lot of their job now is about adding value, and they'll want to help. That's the whole point. They want to help you. Now, you may have to pay for their services. That's accepted, but surely if it means you get the deal, that you want to get the funding, that's a good thing.
It doesn't matter how good the idea is or what it potentially could be. I mean, the basic things aren't there. I obviously don't know. Listen, just from what you said there, I'm like, he's probably wasting his time and other people's time speaking to them, and they might meet him and might listen to what he's saying out of politeness, but if he hasn't got those basic things in place, and that's just the bare minimum, isn't it?
It is, and a funder, to be fair to a funder, you need to go with your suite of information ready, because if it's a debt funder, these people are very busy and they've got lots of deals on the go, and they haven't got time to chase you to get the information. They're not your mum. It's not their job to make sure that everything's done. That's your job. You're asking them for something. You want their money, so you have to present everything. And when I was a relationship manager, if somebody only gave me half the information, I didn't have time to chase them. I was working with the people who had bothered to get everything together, and that deal would just go by the wayside. And it wasn't me being nasty. I ain't got time to run after and go, oh, have you got your got your second or your third year accounts? Have you got your management information? Oh, I kind of do that for you. That's your job. It's your business. You've got to come up with the goods.
I suppose I can. Many years ago, like in the past, I've judged a lot of startup business competitions, and what people don't realize is like they're just one of maybe 100 people that have applied for something in that month, right? But you can't help it when you're comparing them to each other. Some just stand out, like, because they've got everything in place. Just the confidence with the way they write and present and talk. And then the other ones who, again, it might be a great idea, might do well if they just crack on and do it, but to get to that stage and get the funding or to win a competition or again, if you're comparing them with the ones who've got everything in place, they're not going to. So I'm just, you remind us that, because it's kind of the same if you're an investor. If you've got a bunch of propositions in front of you, well, which one are you going to go for? Unless you really love risk and you love and you're going to go with the one that's ready to go, aren't you?
Yeah, and what you'll find an investor, when you go back to the angel point, as I said, they don't want to run your business. They're not going to do all those things for you. You've got to do it for yourself. They'll talk to you, they'll chat to you, they'll try and signpost you, but they ain't going to sit down and write the cash flow forecast. They ain't going to sit down and write the profit and loss. They shouldn't have to. That's your job. And if you can't do it because you haven't got the expertise, and some people haven't, they're good at what they do in delivering their business. But the struggle when it comes to creating the financial information, the suite of information you need, then you need to go and see an advisor to try and guide and help you and make the numbers realistic. There's no point, if it's a startup, there's no point saying I'm going to have revenue in month 1 if you're going to be offering credit terms and no one's going to pay you till month 3. Be realistic with those numbers. And be realistic about the amount you're asking. Don't suggest that you're going to have £1 million in the bank at the end of year 1 if you're clearly not, because funders will look at those numbers. That they're not just. I always remember seeing a cash flow forecast one, and the numbers were exactly the same month on month. And I said, but you offer credit terms. Well, and all he'd done is he pressed the Excel spreadsheet button and it just replicated the numbers across the screen, for January, February, March, all the way through. And I think he thought I wouldn't read it. Well, actually, I'm going to read it because that's sort of my job, And I'm going to say, well, in that instance, well, you have to go back and you have to rework these numbers. And if you're not sure, bring someone in to help you, whether that be a business support agency. And there's 7 in the Northeast, and they do an excellent job. Or do you go to a private advisor and you speak to them, and you try and get advice from them. But don't go. The worst thing you can do is trying to do it yourself if you don't really know what you're doing, and then I can guarantee you'll put some mistakes in those numbers, and they'll get picked up, and that again will put you on the back foot because they don't know what they're talking about. That's the view. You'll be nice to them. You won't say that to their face, but that's what you'll think, and that's not a good place to be.
No, well, definitely if you're trying to get funding or investment from anyone, you've got to be on top of your numbers. It's like if you ever watch Dragon's Den and if the people don't know their numbers, it really upsets the dragons, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's and they're not, that's it's obviously done for telly, but it is a good, it's an example in one sense, because it's like, how long is the pitch? 5 minutes? That's all they really get, don't they? So they're going to ask if you pre-revenue, just say your pre-revenue at the start, then they get it. If you are generating revenue, what's your turnover, what's your gross profit, what's your net profit, and know that for each year you've traded, and then you can reel those numbers off. And if you're saying, well, my number's this, and I'm going to get to this, how are you going to get from 100,000 turnover to 1 million? Well, actually, I've got these deals with 3 supermarkets, and if you can get that message across, that's fine. And sometimes people don't pitch right. There was a business I've read about the other day that's got this. It's a new product, and it was turned down by Dragon's Den because it didn't come cross right. But then it turned out they've got 3 or 4 supermarket deals. And I didn't see the pitch, but I don't know if they got the message across about actually we've got these deals with three national supermarkets, and because they didn't, I suspect they probably just didn't pitch it in the right way, so they came across wrongly. But first impressions count.
Yeah.
You cannot underestimate how much they count. And you form a view of somebody really quickly. And if they come across negatively, or they don't know the numbers, or the slides don't work, it's like car crash sometimes. And it's not pleasant for anybody.
No,
Yeah?
I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it's not. Like, people do business with people doing this. So like, if they don't like, if you're not likable, or people don't see that they can get on with you, they're not going to want to give you money or lend. Well, not give you money.
Yeah, there can be that comes into it. I think you've got to try and get across the fact that you're open to discussing or showing interest with people, and that you don't have, you're learning. As a business owner, you're learning, finding your way, and have to be open to other ideas and other thoughts. Somebody may suggest something that you hadn't thought, a new market that you hadn't considered. I spoke to a business a few weeks ago with another colleague, and he's in the cosmetic sector, and he's having his product created in the UK, but all the bottling's done in the Far East and then shipped across. And he had this real opportunity to do something in the US, but the business hasn't properly launched in the UK. He's got loads of Instagram and Facebook influencers, which is brilliant, and he's building up a following, if you like. And the US is saying, oh well, it's a big corporation in America, and we want thousands of bottles, and we want this, that, and the other. And I said, how are you going to fund that? And if you send the stock to America, what control have you got over that? If it's sat in a warehouse somewhere on the west coast of the United States, how if that deal goes wrong, how do you get it back? And can you afford that? And he'd almost been sidetracked by this deal. Now, it might be an opportunity, but he'd been completely distracted by it and was missing the point that he hadn't actually still launched in the UK, which was his home market. Even though he'd built up this real following, focus on that, get that done. That over there is nice, but your bread and butter is going to be the UK. That's what's going to build your brand. And then if you can do something in the US, great, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. And it may go horribly wrong. You're entering the market in the US that's really cluttered. So how are you going to stand out? You've done that in the UK by influencers, but you've done that over like 6 months. You're trying to do something in a week in the US. That's not going to work. So it was quite interesting. We were always saying, it's his business at the end. He can decide what he wants to do, but we're always trying to say, if I was in your shoes, would I do this or would I do that? It's up to you. All we can do is signpost a little bit of chat, but we can't tell people what to do. It's ultimately their business. It's their decision on who they go to as a funder. It's their decision on what actions they take in the business. It's their baby at the end of the day.
It's good that you do that, because then it's the advice and the expertise that you and your colleagues have got, and because then you can, hopefully people listen to what you say, and you can pass people or recommend the right types of funding or the right types of funds.
We have our own finance hub, and we'll try and signpost that to the hub. And then a lot of people might have heard of crowdfunding but don't know what it actually does. When I took on the role maybe 3 years ago now, crowdfunding, probably in the Northeast, still people thought that's what you did to raise money for the local hospital charity. Nothing wrong with that. People still do that, but actually it is a business tool that can be used as such. And you are starting to see businesses crowdfund, and as long as you understand the pitfalls, and our finance hub is great for that, because it will talk you through the pros and cons of a crowdfund, the pros and cons of angel fund, the pros and cons of getting a business loan, or looking at asset finance, types of asset finance, the types of options, and signpost you to the different trade bodies and associations that exist for, say, asset finance providers in the UK, and then you can decide if you want to then proceed with a particular application. We won't go and tell somebody to necessarily go to a specific funder, because we're not licensed to do so, but we will try and at least say, well, actually, broad brush, here's the funders, and you can go through the their trade body or their association to find one that's best for you, and try and help them a little way down the road. But it's always their decision as to what they what they do at that point.
Yeah,
it has to be. But hopefully they're a bit better informed. That's a critical thing, I think.
Well, you mentioned the finance hub there, so that's an online. Well, it's a bank,
online platform. Yeah.
It's a bank, no pun intended, but if you go on the website, which is just british-business-bank.co.uk, you can find the finance hub, and there's loads of really good resources on there.
Good resources and guides on there. Bank also does a whole series of reports. We did obviously Small Business Finance report that I've referenced earlier on. We also did a report called Alone Together about diversity and equality in business, and how people come from ethnic minorities or female entrepreneurs struggle to access finance and funding, and how challenging it is for them, and how again we're trying to change that dynamic. And the report was sort of endorsed by Piers Linney, who is he's a non-executive director of the bank. Piers used to be on Dragon's Den and is a serial entrepreneur, and he talked about the challenges he faced and the problems he had around securing funding. He talked about going to an event one time, and it was a business awards event, and somebody handed them their coat because they thought he was the cloakroom attendant because he's black. And how awful it was. And somebody else, he went to meet some people who were seeking funding, and because he's an investor as well, of course, and he still does that even though he's not on Dragon's Den anymore. And these people saying, "Oh, do you know when Piers is going to arrive?" And he said, "I am here." And they assumed he would be a white man in his 40s or 50s, which is quite interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. I mean, I've got a little side story to that. We did some training with the UK Business Angels Association, and there was some angels. It was sort of video training, and two brothers were on talking about a pitch event they attended in London. And what angels will do is, if it's a pitch event, they'll be given some information on each business in advance, and they were particularly interested in the second business. The first one was some female entrepreneurs that had a new product that developed, and they came on, and they were all, had colourful outfits on, and they were sort of only half listening to this business. But then they set up to take notice because they had pre-revenue, and they'd done this, that, and the other, and they had real aspirations for the future, and had contracts signed. And actually, they'd been quite dismissive of them because there were three female entrepreneurs, which is grossly unfair. But actually, this is a really good business. They didn't bother to listen for the second business. They went and collared them outside the sort of pitch event afterwards and spoke to them and invested in their business. And he said it was a lesson to us to not prejudge people. And that we were two white men in our 40s who'd always invested in other male-dominated businesses, normally white entrepreneurs. And he said it was a real lesson to us to have an open mind as investors, because actually it doesn't matter your background or your circumstances. It's the business at the end of the day. And how they came across was brilliant in the pitch.
Good. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, I guess the thing is, we're dealing with humans at the end of the day, and humans have flaws, and they have prejudices, and they have and I was going to say rightly or wrongly, really, people tend to be more comfortable around people that they get on with or like them, and so I'm not saying it's that does tend to happen, doesn't it? Where
it does. I think those barriers are changing and are breaking down. We're seeing, certainly our startup loans program, I think around 20% of the entrepreneurs come from black or ethnic minority background. I think 33% of our startup loans program are people who were unemployed or economically inactive, is the phrase. So you are starting to see that change, and also it's encouraging those entrepreneurs to step forward. That's the other challenge as well, because sometimes I've certainly spoken to female entrepreneurs, and sometimes they don't think they're going to be taken seriously, so they don't even think about applying. They don't even think about going in for an event like the Shell Live event that you referenced in the past, because they just don't think they'll win, so they don't think So what's the point? So that their aspirations immediately drop, and that's wrong. But actually, they bring such diversity and a skill set that some entrepreneurs just don't have, and they bring knowledge and expertise and a passion for the business they're doing as well.
Well, that's what we want. Is that we want people to think that, like, it doesn't matter what age, what gender, what area, what location, that as long as if you've done the basics and you've got a good business idea, then you should put your hat in the ring and you should go for it and not feel like you not rule yourself out of anything. Everybody should have a fair crack at it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, if you look, I remember 10 years ago hearing Sarah Davis speak at an event in the Northeast, and I don't think she'd had Crafters Companion that long, her business, and there she is now, serial entrepreneur, investor, angel investor, multiple strings to her bow, as it were, and the confidence and that you see in her now, and she instills that confidence in the entrepreneurs that she works with and invests in, is just something to behold. To be honest, the other weekend she's going to be on Strictly as well, which is just one of the contestants. My wife told me. I don't really follow that stuff, but she just told me. I was like, oh, right. So, but it's an example of her confidence building and growing all the time, and her abilities, and she's shown people that actually it doesn't matter where you come from. She came from County Durham there. Small. I think our business operated from one of the small villages in County Durham. Look where it is now. It's a worldwide brand, and she's at the center of that brand.
Yeah, awesome. That's what we need. Like, good role models of every type of entrepreneur and business owner. And again, that's one of the things I was trying to do with the Startup Week event as well, was to have local Northeast business owners and entrepreneurs on stage. So, because it's important, I've been to so many events over the years where they'll bring in Richard Branson or one of the Dragons or whatever, and entertaining as they are, it can potentially reinforce the feeling that to be successful you have to come from somewhere else or you have to be like them. But for me, it was more important to have people who were successful, generally like national or international success, but they were just like you, just a little bit further on, and you sounded like you, they looked like you knew where they grew up and where they operated, sort of thing. And that definitely, people seem to like that.
I think it's important because it does show that anything can be achieved. Piers Linney, you hear the name and think, oh, he must have been a public school boy. He wasn't. He came from humble background. His family, I think he grew up in a mill town and sort of somewhere Yorkshire, the northwest. He didn't. And he's made his money the hard way. And he's built these businesses up from scratch. But he didn't. He wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He had to work extremely hard to get to where he is in life. And he's a great sort of reference point for a lot of people. And actually, if he can do it, why can't I? I think that's what you need to do. A lot of it is confidence with entrepreneurs, and having the confidence to step forward and pitch and seek the investment and seek the growth. And everybody's at different levels. That's the reality. But if you can show somebody, well, actually, they were there once. They were where you are, and this is what achieves. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, the new dragon for Dragon's Den is Stephen Bartlett, who spoke at Startup Week in 2019. But that was the last live event. And his story of at one point he was so poor, he had no money. He was like going to takeaways and getting like leftover food and just to keep himself. But his success has been meteoric, And then he's very young guy as well. But his mindset is just incredible. So it'd be really good to see him on Dragon's Den bring a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
Last thing, well, not last thing, but we're for the last 10 minutes or so. You've recently done some research, so it's the Access to Finance Spotlight research, which has just been published for spring this year. And I was just going through the Northeast findings. There's a lot of really good information there, which is on the Startup Week blog. So if anyone wants to read it, I think get it from there. And go to newcastlestarterweek.com/blog, and then there's a link to the report in there. But just some of the things was in. Well, firstly, who took part in this survey? Was it finance advisors, or was it business owners, or a bit of both?
It was a bit. I think it was a bit of both, really, to be honest. So we what we tried to do is engage with as many people as we can in the market. Some of them were some of them were completing surveys that we sent out to them. So I had a network of contacts. Some actually had a formal interview that would take place. We try to do it in different parts of the country. And what we're trying to do is to build up a picture and see were there any similarities between different regions and different areas of the country, and the challenges that business owners face when they're trying to access funding, and where we come from since 2015, as it were, to now. Has things changed? And there are still issues and challenges, but we've moved down the road. I think a lot. There is emergence of two angel groups in the region. The Innovation Super Network and the North Invest Group, and another group called Angel Groups. And then you've got also some angels coming in from outside. You still have the Powerhouse, and you have the Northeast Fund operating in this region, but that's also attracted in some other external VCs who are looking closely at the region. And I think also it's you start to see business owners look for funding not just within the region but externally, and advisors as well, helping them to find funders in other parts of the country. And sometimes we'll try and link people up. I linked up an accountancy firm recently who were keen to speak to one of our angel groups that we work with, and didn't have their contact details, and I just linked them up. And it was a simple matter of an email, and to connect them up so they could then have a conversation. And they're an angel group that's a bit London-based, but looks at opportunities on a regional basis and works on a regional angel program. So it's trying to change that dynamic, I think. That's important. And what we're always trying to do is, I suppose, if you like, we're always taking a barometer of what's going on in any particular region at any moment in time, not just the Northeast, but obviously the report was for the whole of the UK, the other regions, and the devolved nations as well.
Yeah, and that obviously gets fed back to, like you say, Bays and sent the Treasury. So
yeah, so because what we're trying to do is show to Bays and Treasury, they want to know what's happening in the regions. Are the programs that we have making the impact that they would hope to see, and what more can we do? And how more can we assist and move things forward? So it's always a case of liaising with that, because if somebody works in Treasury and they want to look at small business finance, they're going to come to the bank and ask that question. They're going to liaise with the bank, and they're going to want to try and work with us, because we are we are trying to be the centre of expertise in that space. So and in some ways guide government decisions as to what happens with regard to a particular programme or a particular activity, and try and support as much as we can. And what we're never going to do is we're never going to impose a particular programme on a region. We want to work with the local stakeholders. We want to work with, whether you be somebody from the public sector or the private sector. We're always keen to try and engage and understand what they're doing. Anyone who really touches a small business, any way, shape, or form, we, from a finance point of view, we're interested in engaging them and speaking to them and understand what they're doing. Can you copy that? As I said earlier, can we replicate an idea that's worked well in one part of the UK, and could that work well in the Northeast or the Midlands or the Southwest or wherever it might be?
Yeah, well, that's the benefit of having that national bank, a national network that
So I got this job because I've lived and worked in the region nearly all my life. In fact, the final question at the interview, I'll never forget it, as I was about to leave the room because I thought we were finished, and the person interviewing me said, just one final question. You do live in the region, don't you? Because we've had people come to this interview and they're from London and they don't know anything about the Northeast, and so all of our team, our network team, have lived and worked in their regions a number of years, either from a banking background, some accountancy background, one or two, with sort of public sector background, but have a good understanding and have worked with SMEs. Some of them have run their own businesses themselves. I ran my own business for a couple of years as a consultant, working in the banking sector, still in the banking sector, but I still did it, and I worked as a contractor. Yeah. So sometimes we've been on the other side of the fence as well, which gives you, an understanding. And you've got your network of contacts, and then you can build on that network of contacts to understand what's going on the ground. That's the critical thing for us.
I think it makes your job easier if you've already got a bit of a network and you know some of the people that you speak to, and if you were coming into that type of role completely cold, it would take you a while to build up your network. And again, right or wrong, people would probably be a bit standoffish. It's like what
they are in the North East. Unusual. It's a small ecosystem, and somebody once said to me, "We're 100 miles from anywhere." It's technically true. You're 100 miles from Leeds and probably about 100 miles from Edinburgh, and it's quite close knit financial and legal community. So if you have somebody who's on the inside, and to a degree I'm on the inside because I've lived and worked in the region for so many years, that makes my job a bit easier, and it does from other colleagues. But my colleague in Wales, Beth, has worked for the Welsh Government. She has worked on accelerator programs and activities, so has a really good understanding of what challenges Welsh businesses face. For example, a colleague in the Southwest still works on an incubator program for one of the universities down there as part-time, as well as doing his role for the bank part-time, because that he's got a good understanding of what businesses need in the Southwest, and there are similarities, but there are also differences when you look regionally. So it's I mean, it's a very different job from what I've done previously, but it's all around trying to help the business at the end of the day. I always used to, my old boss years ago when I first worked for a bank, probably 30 years ago now, he said they don't want the loan, Shaun, and they don't want the overdraft. They want what it does for their business. The overdraft gives them working capital to continue. The loan might enable them to buy their premises or buy some stock or expand in some way, take on a new contract, and never lose sight of that, because people talk about they want a loan, they want what it does for their business. And it's the same investment. It's not they don't strictly want the investment, they want what it does for their business. Enables them to scale and grow, it enables them to expand, whatever it might be. And you should never ever lose sight of that as a funder. That's a critical thing for me.
That's a really well. Yeah, it sounds obvious, but it's not. Like, I think people sometimes forget that, don't they? On all sides, it's not just about the money. It's about what the money can do. Can it help you? Can it help you grow the business? Can it help you create jobs? Can it help you create wealth for yourself, your family, your colleagues, the region, whatever? It's not just, like you say, not just about a loan or an investment. So
for business owners, they've got a passion. That's why they started the business. If you look at the pandemic, 60,000 people in the Northeast alone have become self-employed. Some of it's been forced on them because unfortunately they've lost their jobs, or they've been furloughed and they've decided they didn't really like their job in the first place, and they'd rather do something. They may have had a hobby business or a passion that they'd always wanted to pursue, and the time during furlough possibly has enabled them to think about it and change that dynamic. But they start with a passion for the business, and that's the critical thing. They want to be successful, and people have different degrees of success. I always remember when I first worked for a bank, and they used to talk about a lifestyle business, and it was almost to a degree sneered at. There is no harm in being a lifestyle business, and what we mean by that is you just generate enough income for your family, for you and your family, to be able to live in the style, as my mother used to say, in the style at which you become accustomed to. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, if I make 50 grand a year or whatever the number might be, I'm quite happy with that figure. There's nothing wrong with that at all, because actually you're employing yourself. You might employ one or two other people, and you'll never grow beyond that. But who cares? Because actually you're happy, and it helps your family. And actually, you're not then on the dole queue. You're not unemployed. You are economically active. You're doing something and you're supporting your local community, and you're supporting other businesses by your activity.
Yeah.
You buy services from them, you sell services to them, you sell services to the general public. So, or products to the public. I don't see there's any harm in that. No, you have that passion. You start with that passion, and that's the big thing for me.
Love it. Well, you clearly understand small businesses, which is why you're doing it all, and you're doing a great job with British Business Bank. So, I mean, just last year, I would say that the research I mentioned before, I think it is really good and important that the bank keeps doing that sort of thing, because I mean, that's why we're doing this, because I read it, I was like, okay, there's some positives in there, but there's a couple of potential challenges where it says that, I think it said over 60% of respondents felt that Northeast SMEs weren't very well informed about equity and alternative finance. So that's why I thought, okay, I'll get in touch. How can we together partner up so that I can use my digital channels and help get the message out to my networks and wider networks about, well, what the British Business Bank does and help and support, but also just help educate and raise awareness of the types of funding and finance available. So you're doing you and the bank and your colleagues are doing amazing work, but I think it's important that other people as well play their part and think, okay, how can we help?
I'd agree, because we've come a long way since I took on the role 3 years ago, since the bank came to existence 6 years ago, but still lots more work to be done, lots more challenges, as that stat says. Wouldn't it be great if we were to say that's less than 10% one day? But how do we get to that number? And how do we encourage those businesses to step forward for funding and understand how different types of funding work? So lots of work to be done, but we're continue to be there, available, and always happy to try and engage and support on activities. And it's been great to have a chat this morning. And
really enjoyed it. And we'll do more, obviously, a lot more things over the coming weeks as well. Just lastly, I'd say again, if anyone wants to find out more, go to british-business-bank.co.uk. Loads of good resources on there, the Finance Hub, and some good sort of diagnostics sort of guide you through with recommendations on the type of funding available.
Yeah, and if anyone ever wants to have a chat with me, on a one-to-one basis, I can't talk to everybody. There's only me. But if somebody wants to speak to me, get in touch on me through LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have a chat, try and help as much as I can. Thanks for your time, people. Really appreciate it.
Okay, great. All right, thanks a lot, Shaun.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye now. Bye.